the cloud.
Hey everyone, Howie and Kaylyn here again with another Q&A. Oh, you might see my dog running back there. That's Leah. But we are super excited to be hosting another one of these. We have a bunch of questions that we're going to get through. And just as a reminder, if you want to send in your questions ahead of time, we'll make sure to prioritize those and get them answered. But Kaylyn, do you want to jump into the questions?
Yes. All right. So, a question. Why can a session feel meaningful even when it's hard to put into words?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I think we all can relate to that experience where it's like beyond our ability to translate. And so I think there's something interesting that I think as mo more of us kind of go into this unknown space, we will kind of have new ways of communicating it. But oftentimes, when you're feeling things and you're interpreting things energetically, there's not always going to be a really coherent thought around it. And that's part of what we're learning in terms of navigating life as well. It's like, do we always have to have a conceptual understanding to trust the process?
Yeah.
And it's one of the big ways that we find safety in the mind. It's like, if I can understand it, then I won't have to feel it. And I know, Kaylin, you and I talk about this quite a bit,
Yeah.
but the mind becomes kind of our first escape route where we can find safety or refuge in our life when our life feels really overwhelming. Like, oh, if I can just figure it out, then I won't have to feel this overwhelm anymore. So, in a way, if you can't really understand it, it gives you that perfect opportunity to really just lean into the process, know that more understanding will come as you continue down your path, but that you don't have to know things beforehand or instantaneously in the moment in order for it to be relevant.
Yeah. I love that. And I would say yes to absolutely everything you said. And just kind of holding that awareness that, when we're in altered states, the way that we process, organize, receive, store information, memory, time can look different, right? It isn't our normal way that we would interpret something. So knowing that, you're having this meaningful experience is enough. And trusting that, as you continue to sit with it and work with the medicine, more of why it's meaningful or how to work with that, right? Work with that insight will be revealed. So, if you don't have, normal like language or story, maybe too it's an invitation of really getting into relationship of, what is beneath story and thought and kind of like our normal way, and really moving into sensation and beginning to work with the body. So I think just knowing it can be meaningful is perfect, right? And that's enough.
And to piggyback on that, relevancy is really important. Like it's not always relevant for you to have to carry all of this understanding of everything. So if you kind of take the idea of like traveling light, like I'll know what I need to know in order to take the next step in my
Yeah.
life. If I don't know it now, then I don't need to know it now. That is something that um, we develop over time, like trust in that. But it actually is very liberating when you don't have to be carrying like all of this understanding with you. Because what you'll find, and many of you could probably relate, is that things change, including your perspective. So,
Yeah.
what you might know at this stage in your journey could change as you move forward in your journey. So, like, do you want to have to carry every single thing that you've ever learned in your entire life with you? Or just be like, this was relevant for this step I was taking. It might be relevant for the next step, it might not.
Yeah.
So, the more lightly we can travel, the easier it is. We can just kind of jump into where we are as opposed to needing to have such like a rigid structure of understanding.
Yeah. I love that. So I feel like this next question kind of piggybacks into this beautifully, and it's kind of like very similar, but how do I know something is happening even if my experience felt subtle?
Well, even outside of the ketamine sessions, like things are always happening. Of course, our level of awareness is going to fluctuate and oscillate. Like we don't need to be super neurotic about our presence. And I used to be that way, where it's like, am I present? Am I present? Am I present? Do I understand? And it's exhausting. It's like you're policing yourself. You have to understand that sometimes when you're doing things, you're not going to be like hyper aware or like hyper mindful in everything. It can become kind of like a baseline level of awareness where, in general, you're more aware. In general, you're more conscious, but also understand that like you're not always going to be in this state of hyper awareness. Like sometimes you're going to be busy running errands and you're
Yeah.
just in your day. So I don't think we have to have this pressure of like, if I'm not always 100% present, I'm somehow doing it wrong. Think of it similar to like when you're awake during the day versus asleep at night. It's like those are two very different states of consciousness.
Mhm.
Well, during the day, you also have oscillation, where sometimes you're more present with the body. Sometimes you're busy doing things externally. So I think it's more about checking in with yourself on a more regular basis. Like, hey, body, how we doing? What do we need? Versus this neurotic sense of always being present.
Yeah. I will say too, just speaking to like the sensation of it feeling like a subtle experience. I think there's a lot of people that come to this therapy who are drawn to, having the psychedelic experience, and like myself included, like that is a very cool part of this therapy to get to experience altered states. But you have to also go into this knowing that that isn't in itself what makes it therapeutic, right? It's everything that happens during and after it. So just because you didn't feel like you had this big wow, mystical, whatever type of experience, doesn't mean that you aren't receiving those therapeutic benefits that are behind the scenes or just not in that conscious awareness yet, right? Because and I know we've talked about this before, but really what we're doing is we're working with the subconscious, we're working with the body, right? And so much of that, like you aren't going to have awareness or consciousness to the transformation, right? The neuroplasticity, the new neurons beginning to form. But you're going to have evidence, like Howie's saying, in your day to day life when you just begin to notice, right? When you begin to check in, when you start noticing like little shifts, and that happens through, just how do I cultivate a deeper state of presence throughout my day? And it's not to be perfect, but just starting to bring awareness, right? Because this beautiful thing happens when we begin to start cultivating awareness. Well, that really is what's going to expand perception. And then when we do this type of work, like with the ketamine, we start teaching our body that it's safe. And then in our day to day, we start, integrating. Oh my gosh, I cannot talk today. And that's what's really like concretes in the change, right? So the biggest invitation here to like wrap this in a bow would be just continue to notice, right? Draw awareness to your mood, your emotions, your energy levels, the choices you're making, and that will give you everything you need to know about kind of where you're at and how to gauge the therapy. Do you want to add anything to that?
I would just add that sometimes when it feels subtle, the medicine might be working more physically, for example, or it could be working more emotionally or
Yeah.
mentally, and maybe not so much spiritually or in terms of consciousness expansion. So if you view the medicine as being really intelligent and understanding like the order of priority that best serves you, you can kind of trust it. Because what if the medicine's like looking at your body and it's like this body needs a lot of healing. Like this body's exhausted. It has disease. It has whatever, maybe things you're not even aware of. It's like let's focus on that first so we have a strong container for consciousness to expand. So something
Yeah.
in the body like that might seem kind of subtle because it's not the, fireworks show that we all want. Can we honor that? Like, okay, maybe I'm going through a process that actually gives me a foundation to actually land the plane once I do expand. So trusting
Yeah.
that this intelligence is working in ways that you're not going to be aware of, kind of to Kaylyn's point. And as you start to trust the process, it actually invites in more of that expansion. So it's kind of a paradox in that way.
Yeah, I want to just put one more thing because when you're talking, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, because I love what you said too about really like trusting the medicine and the medicine having its own intuition and intelligence. Like, I firmly believe that with all psychedelics. And we have to also that our body is wise in that way too, right? So you have to remember the body is really concerned about keeping us safe. So if things feel subtle and they still feel meaningful, right? Kind of like that first question, you have to also remember that your body may be protecting you because we don't want to do this too fast or too quickly for the body or nervous system be able to have capacity to hold or integrate. So just because you're not aware doesn't mean that it's not happening belief or beneath the layer of consciousness, right? That you're operating at. So I think too, it's just always trusting yourself, always trusting the medicine. And I know I've said this before, but always approaching our sessions that everything's happening on purpose, right? And if it feels more subtle, then what if I went into that knowing that this is on purpose in a form of protection, right? And maybe that is the way that I'm disassociating for this healing to take place so that it isn't as painful for me, right? So there's always a deeper why, even if we don't know exactly what that is. So I love this. This is a good combo.
And I think too, it's okay to be annoyed or frustrated that the sessions aren't the
Yes.
light show. Because what's weird about that, like for me, like of course, like I go in like hoping it's gonna be something cool. So like when I get one that's like, oh, this is boring and I'm just sitting here twiddling my thumbs, like it is frustrating. But that's the exact thing that I get to sit with is the frustration, the disappointment that it's not going the way I want it to go. I mean, how many times does that happen in our day-to-day life where we want things to go a certain way and it goes the complete opposite? So it's kind of a funny way too that the ketamine's still working at that angle. Like, hey, I'm not
Yep.
going to give you what you want or what you intended. I'm going to give you the exact opposite. That reveals a lot about your character, your ability to sit with disappointment, frustration, while admitting, like, yeah, I am frustrated. I did want it to be something really meaningful and something big, but I got something small. But here I am. How do I want to relate to that? Do I want to turn it into a big problem? Or can I trust that this is what's being revealed by me not getting what I want?
Yeah. I love that. All right, let's go to the next one. What does it mean when so many different emotions or sensations begin to come up during my sessions?
So simply put, I would say that it's your system feeling safe enough to finally express those things.
Yep.
So for like personally, I was very resistant to sadness and grief, and it was like very shoved down in my system, also with like anger. So it took a while for my system to feel safe enough to kind of let those skeletons out of the closet. And so it's a really positive sign if you're starting to feel things that maybe you've been numbed out to, that, hey, my body feels safe enough to communicate this to me now, to bring it to my attention.
Yep.
So it's a really beautiful thing. And I know sometimes when we associate like when I'm feeling sad, I must be doing something wrong. Like, aren't I supposed to be feeling happy through this
Mhm.
process? Sometimes the path to, lightening the load that you're carrying is through processing things that you've been shoving down. So it's not like it's not part of the process. It's just sometimes the journey to getting to a place where you feel lighter involves processing some of that density that you've been, stuffing into the attic.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to add to that without sounding redundant because I agree with everything that you said. And it's the base level, it's healing's taking place, right? So many of us have been taught that it isn't safe to feel. And it especially isn't safe to feel sadness, anger, bitter, whatever. You know what I mean? And I think the beautiful thing about this medicine is it does create those pathways in the body where for the first time for a lot of us, for maybe even decades, that it has a way that it can exit and emote and express from the body. So, if 1 minute you're laughing and 1 minute you're crying, and then the 1 minute you're like, what, am I crazy? What's going on? Like, this is all just part of the process. And the more that you can just be an objective observer and like a witness of it, the more like cathartic and healing it will be, because at that moment, like there isn't anything to do, to fix, to figure out about it. It's like it simply just wants to be felt. So, such a deep invitation for those people that are feeling all these things to like just let yourself feel, drop in and feel, because it's going to be amazing for you on the other side. So that's awesome. This,
Really.
oh, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's complete for that one for sure.
Yeah. So where are we at? Why does each ketamine journey feel so different than the last? Am I doing something wrong?
So, kind of on what we were talking about before, the ketamine works on a multitude of levels. We don't have to like overanalyze that. But sometimes it's going to work more on the body. Sometimes it's going to work more on the mind, emotionally, spiritually. So that can give to the different flavors. Of course, there's other things too, like maybe our preparation was a little different. There's things collectively that can change, what we're experiencing day to day as well.
Yeah,
I try to do the best I can in terms of preparation to make sure I'm owning, my side of the fence and giving myself the best opportunity to expand and have an experience that I prefer. But of course, it doesn't always go that way. I have found, though, in many years of working with this medicine, that as you really learn to surrender into the process and you become more familiar and more advanced with it, it's not a guarantee, but you learn to play with it in a different way
yeah,
where you can, like, for example, like I would say 80 to 90% of my sessions now, I do reach a dissociative state and it's pretty consistent. But I've worked with this for quite a while and I've like really trained my system to relax into it and that it's included in the process. So I think the more inclusive we are of the body, and I know I like to beat the drum on that, like really like here to become more intimate with my body, more intimate with the present moment, more intimate with my mind. The more inclusive, the more you can expand. So a lot of the times when
yeah,
we're using this from the perspective of escaping our suffering, that's okay, right? Like sometimes we just need a freaking break. But there is a point where you start to like bump up against the ceiling. And it's like now it's time to be here, not run from here, but learn to stay here. So
yeah,
when we start shifting our intention to how can I be more supported in this moment? How can I stay with what I want to run from? That for me really seems to help change the trajectory and make the sessions a little bit more consistent. But again, it's not like a 100% thing. I still have sessions that feel like duds, that feel like nothing, that don't go
yeah,
where I'd prefer them to go.
yeah. Again, I think you just nailed all that so beautifully. And it's so hard because there are so many different variables that can impact your sessions, right? And again, we don't actually know what exactly causes what. And I think, to Howie's point, when you work with this medicine for a duration of time and you start getting into relationship and you kind of get to know yourself better and how will you best work and what's the best time, it's easier to kind of take some of those kind of things out of it. But I'm thinking of when I first started with this medicine and also being in a similar place where some would feel really intense, some would feel mystical, some would feel like duds, some would feel more introspective, right? And I think that's kind of the beauty of this medicine too, is that it is like multidimensional in a way, right? It's not a cookie cutter where, I'm going to take this dose and it's going to give this same result every single time. But kind of like tying back to our other points, I think the medicine is wise and intelligence and it always gives us what we need, right? And if we look at them as this lens, and I love when you use the word play, of just like playing and exploring and presence, you're going to find some gift in that moment. And even if it's just, an hour, 90 minutes that you got to slow down and be with your body, like that alone is still a gift. So I wouldn't be hyper focused on the different like shades or tones of your session and just knowing that like it is all on purpose and it's revealing and healing something else in you and just exploring like what's here in this moment, I think would be my invitation with that.
exactly. And if you think about it, like in the beginning of doing this work, we kind of have like a backlog of things that we've been avoiding.
True.
And a lot of times that's emotionally. So
Yep.
it's like I'm avoiding feeling X, Y, and Z. And so the ketamine, like what we would call healing in the beginning, is like those things coming to the surface. So the medicine's working in a way to bring all these things that we're unconscious to the surface. But as you get in a rhythm of not having such a backlog all the time, like all this extra weight that you're carrying around, because you're processing things more in real time. So
Yep.
it's like I check in with my body, what do you need? Right. So sometimes it's like just practical. I need water, I need food, I need movement, I need rest, I need to go to the bathroom. Right. Our body's always communicating to us, but sometimes it's like I just need you to hold me, right? Because I
Yep.
feel scared or I feel sad. Perfect. Like when we start doing that in a rhythm, like day to day, our body's not like coming to us at the end of the month, like, hey, you haven't checked in with me, and I have like 9 million things that I need to talk to you about. You kind of keep the slate clean so that when you actually go into the ketamine session, there's not this like huge list of things that you need to go over. It's like, hey, we can have fun together. Like, this is devotional. Like, this isn't about fixing things or needing to have unsaid conversations. It becomes more like play. And I think that's one of the biggest things with integration is a willingness to check in on your body like you would check in on your child. Like, hey, how's it going? What do you need? I'm here. I'm in the other room if you need me. So that rhythm for me has really changed ketamine going from needing to escape or needing to improve more into what's possible, like what's
Yep.
possible to do in this human life. And that's where I think it starts to get more fun and more expansive because you're actually grounding it through your day-to-day participation in making sure that your body is a high priority throughout your day.
Yeah.
So that balance I found to be really helpful too.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like this next question kind of like ties into where you were just going with that. So I want to pull this one into um, what is the best way to support myself in hours after the session? Is slowing down after the medicine work and a crucial part of this process?
So I would say in the beginning, it's especially important just to be mindful of your inputs because we're in this area of opportunity with the window of neuroplasticity to kind of recalibrate and rewire. I do think there is a balance though, like you don't want to be overly neurotic about it to where your body's like, dude, chill out. Like
Yeah.
we'll make changes, but like give me a break for a second. So it's a balance of like being mindful, but also not over policing
Yep.
because the body feels like it's under constant surveillance. Like you really think it's going to stay that open. It's like a helicopter parent. So do your best, right? But you're not going to do any of this perfectly. So like
Yeah.
after a session, just practically what I like to do is to journal. Like I like working with like ChatGPT because I can riff with it as opposed to just like writing in a journal. Um, that's for me personally. You can do whatever you want. If you like writing, you want to draw a picture, if you want to do something a little creative, eat a, cook a good meal where you can be creative with that. I think those things are really awesome to do.
Yeah. I would say too, the biggest thing that, at least for me, like what I always try to focus on is what is going to be that thing that really nourishes like my soul, right? And I use my intentionally, right? So like what is that thing that's going to nourish you? And for me, I love music. Music is like one of those things that no matter where I'm at in life is medicine. So after I'll listen to some music, maybe I do some light movement, maybe I dance, maybe it feels good to journal, maybe nature is your thing, but finding those things that deeper pull you into yourself because you are kind of in this really sensitive state when you're first coming out of your sessions, right? And you want to be mindful, like how he's saying, like, what am I energetically consuming while I'm in this sensitive state? Because you have to think everything you watch, you read, you listen to, the people you hang out with, the food you eat, all those things are a way that you're essentially taking an energetic vote for this is who I see myself as, and this is what I want to experience. And that goes for any time of the day, but even more potent when you're, in that post session window, right? So looking at, you know, what is that thing that my body is calling for right now? And how can I give that to myself? What is the thing that feels the most exciting or that's pulling and lighting me up right now? Could I do that thing? And I think the beautiful part about this is it can pull you into such deeper relationship with yourself, right? When you are taking that moment, not to do, what every guru or article online says to do, but like, what do you feel like you need? What do you feel like you want to do? And knowing that there isn't a right or wrong or good or bad way to do it, but it's how am I going to do this in a way that deeply nourishes and fulfills me at this time? And if you're following that pulse and you're doing that, you're always going to be going in the right direction.
You nailed it. And I think what's cool about doing it in this window, like everything Kaylyn's mentioning the things that deeply resonate with you, is that sometimes when you're not in that state, there can be resistance to actually taking action on those
Yeah.
things. Like maybe after a session, like if you're doing it at night, it's like, I want to go outside and look at the stars. Like, great. Like you might have thought of that before, but it's like, whatever. I'm not going to do it. There's like that resistance is lightened, so it's easier to actually go do that thing. So it's just like I get to do it and see from the experience itself, like, is it something that nourishes me? Another point I want to add to this is sometimes we can be hard on ourselves. Like, why aren't these wires hard wiring? Like, why am I not like making this a long-term habit? And again, it's like think of this as more of like an impression than something that's like you do it one time and now it's just your whole new identity, because that can add a lot of pressure to your system.
Yeah.
It's a willingness to try things that maybe you've had resistance to, so you can really start getting feedback. Does this nourish me? Is this something that, that I was willing to experiment with? And having that resistance taken away can get us participating in ways that we want to, but maybe for
Yeah.
whatever excuse we're not doing. So I think it's more
Mm,
about that than like you're going to be perfect because you did
yep.
it during the neuroplastic window.
Yeah. Ooh, I love that. That's a really good point. And I want to pull this one in because I'm like, this also just piggybacks beautifully. How do I know if I'm truly integrating well or just moving on too quickly to another session?
That's a really good question. And just the fact that you're asking the question is great. It's like, am I using this as an escape? Am I using this as a tool to really help me re-engage with my life? There's nothing wrong with using things as an escape from time to time. I mean, sometimes you just have a crappy day and it's like, I just want a break. That's human.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes we get too black and white with this idea of like, I'm horrible if I'm using it because I want a break from my stressful day. I just think if it's consistently used that way, eventually you're going to bump up against a wall and life's going to show you, like, hey, it's time to integrate. So
Yeah.
ultimately, life's going to reveal the balance. So you don't have to really worry about it too much. But if
Yeah.
you can honestly say, like, okay, maybe I'm coming back to this medicine like a little too quickly, like I'm not really doing the homework anymore. Just being honest with yourself. But again, not with the pressure of you're going to do it perfect. Like sometimes that might be true. Like, yeah, I guess maybe I am rushing through it a little. That's fine. Like sometimes you
Yeah.
have to bump up against the boundary just to get feedback that invalidated in what you already knew to be true. So
Yeah.
whatever rises must come down. And I think this is a really important understanding because sometimes we can think like I can just go nuts with the medicine and I'm going to make all this headway. It's like, yeah, well, you get this high, you're going to have to come back down that much. So either way, everything balances out. So taking
Yeah.
your time with it is going to make it less volatile. Because like, okay, I have a little expansion and then I come back and a little more expansion and I come back versus major expansion and major come down. So if you understand that, then at least you can see like, is it worth it? Like, do I want to have 2 weeks of feeling like I'm lit on fire for life and then a month of being sick? Up to you, right? But you can at least see that that's the way it works.
Yeah. And this question I feel like is so hard because everybody has a different rhythm and pace with this therapy. So it's so hard to say like, are you going too quickly? Are you not integrating well? And I feel like it's such a deep personal experience. So it's hard to like put like a black and white answer on this. And I feel like there's nuance, right? Because I think that so many people, at least from what we've noticed, right, enter into our world and they do just want to feel better. And it feels like, the only thing that's giving them that is just taking more medicine, right? And that's not wrong because that's kind of part of this process and how it starts. So if that's where you're at and you're not sure if you're integrating, but you're noticing, like my mood's starting to feel better and you're noticing like little subtle things, like just keep going on the pace that you're at and knowing that like Howie's saying, if it gets to an issue where you are going too fast, too hard, too quick, like your system is going to crash because you haven't built capacity, right? Integration is about capacity. you know, the other thing, that I think of, for people who are more seasoned and we have been doing this work for a while, I think that yes, that these are medicines and they can also be poison because it can be another form where we spiritual bypass what we think like, oh, well, I'm doing altered state. So, it's not that. But there's a way that we're using that because we aren't willing to look at what's coming up in our day to day life. And we're having the same themes and patterns and triggers and things. And we keep running to the medicine. The medicine is saying, hey, look at this thing. And we're like, oh, no, I don't need to look at that thing. I'm just going to do more medicine. Right. So you can see there's difference in that relationship. So, first, I think it's about being radically honest with yourself and where you're at, and also having this deep invitation to explore your relationship with the medicine and knowing that the more that you work with it and as you evolve, like that also will evolve. So just keep checking in, and if you ever are at that point where you don't know, like we have tons of resources here and coaches where you can get support. So if you ever feel like you're like, am I at this point, like just reach out. Like that's literally what we're here for. So
And also, like, very practically, sometimes that can show up as like, oh, I need higher and higher dose, and you're already like at the maximum dose. That
yes.
can be a sign of like, maybe you should cool the jets because you need to spend some time chopping wood and carrying water. Like, I'm sorry, but a
Yeah.
lot of this process is how you show up in the mundane, boring, day-to-day human crap. Like, it just
Yeah.
is what it is. That's where you bring it back to earth. So,
I will say too, guys, it becomes like a form of mental masturbation. And I know that's kind of like a funny concept, but if you really think about it, it does because information is everywhere. Me and Howie were literally just talking about this. Information is everywhere. It is super accessible, right? You can know anything, learn anything like this, right? So knowing more and having more experiences and having more insights isn't the thing that creates change, right? Integration does. So if you take one aha, one insight, one big revelation that you have in a session, and you really committed to doing that for 2 weeks, for a month, that would be more powerful than heading off into these altered states to just gather more information. Information isn't going to change your life, right?
it doesn't free you from pain. And I think
No.
that's where sometimes we can get a little lost in if I understand this well enough, then I won't have to feel as overwhelmed as I do. But
Yeah.
like
If
the
I just know why,
yeah, if
then
I
it
know
won't hurt.
why, then the feeling will go away.
Yeah.
But it never works that way. The knowing why is actually an invitation into the feeling. Because if you have a bigger perspective of like, okay, everything's working out perfectly, but it's not always going to feel like that to your body, right? Like you could be in the example I like to use, it's like we take ketamine and we're able to see like we're taking off in an airplane and we're looking down at Earth and we see like a beautiful lake and like a trail that leads to that lake. And it's like, wow, that trail looks so beautiful. Like, look how perfectly it goes through those mountains and it ends up in this beautiful destination. From the perspective of the airplane, you're not hiking the trail. Like, you're just getting to see how beautiful it is. And from that perspective, it just feels easy. But then
Yeah.
you land the plane, it's like, all right, time to hike it. And you realize, like, 100 yards down, you have to scale a rock wall and you're scared shitless. So
Yeah.
both are true. It is a beautiful trail, But actually going down and hiking, it's different than seeing it from the airplane. So
Yeah.
which is it? You can understand that, hey, this leads to that beautiful lake. But the path to getting there is not going to feel like it does when you're just looking at it from the aerial view.
Yeah.
So going to the aerial view is like the idea of trying to know your way out of actually having to hike the hike to get to the lake or to get to the top of the mountain. So can we use that perspective? Oh, I saw where this was going, so that gives me courage to take the steps on the hike because I know it ends up somewhere beautiful. Even if it sucks during parts of it, even if I'm totally freaked out during parts of it, I still know that this path leads somewhere. That's
Yeah.
how we land a perspective versus every time I go to that rock wall, I want to get back in the airplane. It's like
Yeah.
eventually you're going to have to climb that feeling freaked out. Welcome to being a human, right?
Welcome to the party. Welcome to
Welcome
the
to Earth.
party.
So yeah, I just think that sometimes that's the slippery slope with this work because when we're out of the human experience, it feels all hunky dory, and we think
Yeah.
that's how it should always feel. But they're two different states, right? One's the aerial view, one's boots on the ground. It's not the
Yeah.
same thing. Doesn't make one right or wrong. They're both true. They're just different
Yeah.
perspectives. So if we're using one to escape the actual walking of the path, it's not going to help us that much. You can't
Hmm.
think your way to the top of the mountain. You can't see your way to the top. You have to walk.
Yeah. I love that. And I think too, like just to kind of piggyback and repeat what you're saying, it's like my favorite thing about this work is that we do get to experience that other and that possibility and kind of like that bird's eye view. Because without that, so many of us who are bracing or in hypervigilance could never access it or touch it. But then it's like that alone isn't enough, right? It isn't enough just to touch it. It's like, how am I going to actually walk through the doors that the medicine opened? And like, there's integration, there's transformation, right? There's becoming. And I think when you can start looking at the work as like a relationship and a dance and a becoming and like an ever ending evolution instead of this like linear fixed thing, it gets to be a lot more fun, right? Like it just gets to be a lot more fun. So, yeah, I love that.
Because you're
What
not
do you
taking
think?
it personally, right?
Yeah,
It's like
it's,
when we don't see the bird's eye view, it's like we are just lost on the trail. We have no
yeah,
clue if there's anything pretty, if
doing
the
circles.
hike's even worth it. We don't know what direction we're going. So we do get a lot from that aerial view. Like, oh, I can see the lay of the land. Like I can see that this does result in something better. But that doesn't replace the fact that it's still going to be challenging at points during the hike. And to Kaylyn's point, like, who do you have to become to climb that rock wall,
Yeah,
right? Like, you're going to have to learn a lot of skills, a lot of ways to regulate yourself, all these things to actually make it up to the top. And like we were talking about this the other day, it's like, okay, you climb to the top of the rock wall, you're super grateful that you're at the top, but you're like, man, that sucked. Like, that was
I
terrible. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to like any of it. It's just like,
actually hate
what's
hiking.
required. So you're not going to like all of it. Like, let's just get that out there. Like, parts of it are going to push you. They're going to be uncomfortable. They're going to be confusing. It's going to feel painful. But when you have direction combined with community, where it's like, look, you're fine. Like, just keep going.
Yeah,
Like, you're going to get through it. Yeah, it sucks. Like, I've been there. Like, and it still sucks sometimes, right?
sometimes.
So I'm not at a point where I'm like, well, I figured out how it stops sucking
Yeah.
sometimes. But it's not, for me, it's like I don't have resistance to it sucking anymore. It's like if I'm having a tough week, it's like this is just what's happening. How do I relate and engage my life in this way? Like it's no
Yeah.
longer a personal thing of like, what did I do wrong to deserve this? It's like I'm being shaped in ways I can't see. I don't like it. Maybe I don't want to rest all week. I've been sick, like for weeks now. It's been
Since the beginning of the
exhausting.
year.
Yeah, just been nonstop. like feeling exhausted, but I still show up in the way I can. And the rest of the time, I'm trying to nourish myself and rest, just honoring like as much as I want to just be high energy and amped up. Like that's not what life's presenting right now. Okay, I can still participate. So that's all I have on that one.
I was going to say we're probably about time to wrap it up too, but the last one was just what does real transformation through this work actually look like? And I think this is just such a beautiful way to wrap this conversation up because again, it's not about it always, feeling good or looking a certain way or whatever way that you've pedestalized your healing journey in this idea of what you need to be, right? I think that real transformation with this work happens when you begin to relate to yourself and to your life in a different way. And one of my clients today was actually telling me, she goes, you have no idea what a gift it is to be able to see the world in a new way and how profound that is for me and how a year ago, she didn't want to be here and was actively considering not. And now she's fighting for a life that feels amazing to her to live every day. Like that's the power of what this work looks like, right? And it's not that everything magically changed and is better, but she's different and how she sees it different. What she makes it mean is different. How she responds is different. And like to me, that is the best gift that this medicine can give you, right? Not this cookie cutter, perfect, non triggering life, but a capacity and a nervous system and aliveness that can have, its presence in all of it. Right. So that's all I have to say.
I love that. I think it's exactly it. It's a relationship, it's a new posture towards life, is what I think transformation really is. Out of victimhood and control
Yes.
into a dance and co-creative experience with life, which is basically I don't get to choose what life presents me, but I get to choose how I relate to life. And can I see, even if I hate the way it feels, even if I hate the circumstances I'm in, that life isn't doing that to punish me or as a personal failure, but it's doing it to strengthen me. It's doing it to help me build capacity. It's doing it to help me build unconditionality and love for myself. And not love like honeymoon love, like I always like the way I feel or the way I look. Like that's, come on, like that's a bunch of BS. It's I refuse to abandon you no matter what, especially if I don't like it. I refuse to leave this moment just because it's outside of my preference. That's true liberation because if you don't care if it's hard sometimes, then you get to just really relish when it's easy because it's like
Yeah.
I'm not gripping anything anymore. Life puts something on the dinner table, I'm willing to eat. That's true freedom. And then life becomes juicy, not because it always feels happy, because you're actually living it. You get to live out your hero story. You get to live out that action hero movie. How boring would a movie be if like I just felt happy the whole time? Like,
There was no hills to climb, no
yeah,
triumph, no victor moment.
yeah,
Like,
snooze fest. We
yeah.
think we want that, and I understand why, because when we've been suffering a long time, of course we just want to balance out with some easy days. Because suffering all the time is also not balanced. But I think what we really want deep down is the contrast. So if I know my tough days are balanced out with easy days, who cares if there's tough days? Good. That'll push me, right? That'll strengthen me. And if I get days where I get a break, who cares? I can show up to those days more charged up.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say transformation. It's just a relational posture. It's not like wow, you cracked the code on how to feel happy all the time.
Good job.
Good job. You're done. See you later. You can leave Earth.
I love it. I love it. Well, I think we'll stop there today for questions. But we want to thank everyone who's watching the replay for these, those who are showing up to our group calls. we are really focusing on community. I know you're going to keep hearing us talk about it, but that is a thing that is really big for us right now, and that we're really feeling called to cultivate this with you all. So, if it's hanging out here on the Q&As, making posts in the community, finding ways to come and be a part of these events and things that we're hosting, because the more that we get feedback from you guys, the more that we're going to create and weave into this. So, if there's something that you guys think would be really cool to experience for us to teach on, whatever it is, like, we're always welcome to your guys' input. So, you can drop them below this, post them in the community, send us a DM. But we're just so excited to be here and do this with you guys. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Kaylin. And for those of you that want your relief and like feeling better to last longer and to like really cultivate this rewiring, show up to these things because the connection and your willingness to prioritize this in your life makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah.
You want faster results, which we all want, show up, like make it important.
Yeah.
So we're doing this. The more you show up, I promise you it's going to pay dividends because you're nurturing this part of your life. And we're in a time collectively right now where obviously a lot's going on. So you're not alone in this. We're here for you. So we'd love to see you guys on the group calls, send in your questions. And I think that's it for today.
Yeah. All right. See you next time.
Thanks, Kaylin.